Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Elise Schropp. I am the Director of Operations at the Indiana Restaurant and Lodging Association. Very excited to be here today to partner with Ivy Tech to talk about self-care and wellness in the hospitality industry. This is a session that we wanted to provide to students based on some of the inquiries that have come from you all on real-life situations you found yourselves in the industry that may not be taught in a classroom, and it's always important to have a conversation and create a forum around these issues. This is our second panel. We're glad you've joined us. I want to just take a moment, first of all, to introduce our panelists to you all. If you could just go down the line, we'll start with Melissa. Introduce yourself and a little bit of your background.
Okay. My name is Melissa Falak, and I am a therapist with Families First. I currently work here at Ivy Tech, and I provide free counseling services to the students here. My background is I have my master's in clinical psychology. My background is in trauma and substance use.
All right, I am Kanye Ori. I work with Prevention Insights at the Indiana University School of Public Health. My background is in organizational communication with a little emphasis in health communication. So I intersect that with public health, and I help direct the Center for Prevention through the School of Public Health.
I'm Chris Lechte, owner and operator of Epicurean's Catering, adjunct instructor for 15 plus years at Ivy Tech and the Art Institute. 45 years in the business and probably seen many things. So hopefully I can lend some assistance.
Ashley Brooks, and I have my own hospitality design company, Eros Hospitality. I've dabbled in a lot of different, in this food space, in this food industry. Cheesemaker, I opened a restaurant, co-founded a farmer's market in Garfield Park, and I do a lot of food justice work in the community. And I have a pretty wide variety of a background, but actually went to Ivy Tech for a little bit.
Thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate you being here to lend your wisdom to this conversation. And I'll kind of kick it off probably a bit more for those of you who have been in the industry, and then we'll get to you, Kanye. But why do you think, do you think that you see the need for wellness and self-care at an exponentially higher rate in this industry? And why? Is it the pace? Is it the expectation, the hours? If one of you maybe wants to take that right off the bat, definitely.
So I worked in the industry going through college, so I've done 10 years in the front of the house, so waitressing, bartending, hostessing, and I've also worked in other areas, and I've personally experienced a lot more stress within the service industry because of the high-paced stuff. There's a lot of expectations, whether it's expectations from the back of the house to get stuff out on time, whether it's expectations from your customers to get things right, and it can be really stressful because you don't get a huge opportunity to relieve yourself. Not a lot of breaks, not a lot of time to sit down. There are times where I can definitely say that working in the service industry has been more challenging for me than being a mental health therapist, just because everything is go, go, go.
Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very demanding industry in a lot of ways. And so I don't think that there's a very positive culture surrounding that right now with health and wellness and taking a holistic approach to that.
Well, I guess my question for you all would be, how do you, working in the field, balance that? How do you find, as Melissa said, a chance to take a break and maybe process your day or your last couple hours of your shift?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I think you just have to make a conscious choice to do it as far as winding down. And sometimes it's not easy because in this business, part of it is getting keyed up, kind of like musicians before they go on stage, because you're going to be on performance for a couple of hours where you really, really have to put it out, and then it's over. So an individual needs to make a personal, conscious decision to say, okay, I'm going to do something that's going to help me to wind down. And obviously I'm not talking about something that's not good for their health, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that's just some breathing exercises or just some physical exercises that aren't so demanding that help your muscles wind down, or having beverages that are high in minerals and vitamins and nutrients to resupply you, so that you have that energy to wind down, as opposed to choosing alternatives, which again aren't really good for you.
And I think there are a lot of ways to sort of take care of yourself. Obviously, physically, I think that's really important. But I think there are a lot of emotional, mental exercises and things that practices we can adopt. For me personally, being in the restaurant industry, I was never like cooking on the line. I've been a pastry chef. I'm familiar with all aspects of the industry, but being on that line is like a special kind of challenge. And I think a lot of people tend to fall into certain patterns of, addiction and things that they lean on to get through the stress of that kind of job. And it's also sort of supported by this like general culture of the industry where it's, glamorized in a lot of ways, and that kind of behavior is encouraged and validated in a lot of ways that aren't healthy. For me personally, my circumstances wouldn't really allow me to party that much. I have a young child, so that wasn't really an option in my mind. And I think for me, it was really important to sort of dive into community volunteerism and community development, and so that really helped me find balance in my own life.
Yeah, theoretically, the fast-paced industry demands that mental breaks are as important as physical breaks, and employees in this industry have to take those breaks and just step outside and have some fresh air, and and instead of reaching for a soda or a can of Coke or anything to just re-energize yourself, it's very important as well to just allow yourself to unwind. And physical exercise is very important as well. It's an industry where you're on your feet most of the time, and so you have to stay fit and emphasize. And when we emphasize self-care in this industry, it means that when you're taking that time, if you're into yoga or meditation or just having quiet moments and trying to find downtimes, even when you're in your off days, and just do the things that would re-energize you. These things, in addition, really allow you to deal with the stress levels that the job demands.
Yeah, I find for myself, even just taking like a minute to go to a bathroom, like even if I don't need to go to the restroom, I will go and just like breathe for like 30 seconds, and that's really helpful. I've found that to be a really good coping technique. And we talk about employees needing that break, but what does this look like? And Ashley, you talked a little bit about the culture. What does it look like from a management standpoint when you, as a manager, are trying to turn tables? You are dealing with an array of issues, and I feel like this industry is mostly made up of all hands on deck moments. Mm-hmm. What does it look like from a management standpoint to help facilitate that for employees?
Yeah, I think having a really strong leadership it's really important. If the people at the helm of an organization or a restaurant don't know how to lead positively and in a healthy way, and really kind of instill that as part of the restaurant culture, it's like a little microcosm, then I think you're just setting everyone up for failure, basically. So I feel like that leadership structure is key, and it's not just about delegation and turning tables, and all of those things are important, but it's really about having someone kind of inspiring at the top of it. So that helps. I also think, like, on a broader level, we could probably talk forever about this, but I think the American culture is a little different too, where I think have just been indoctrinated to work really long hours, really hard, and validate ourselves and like how long we've worked and how hard we've worked. You just don't see that in other cultures where they really value taking breaks throughout the day and spending time with family, and so I think that's, to be aware of that, I think that's just prevalent in our culture here.
And maybe from more of a clinical side of things, what are maybe a couple ways that an employee could vocalize their need for a break?
Right. Well, I think it's really important because of the high stress to really practice using assertive communication skills, because you want to let somebody know how you're feeling without freaking out on them. Because if you start yelling at your boss, you're overwhelmed, they're not going to hear anything that you're saying. So I think it's about kind of practicing that, of just letting them know, like, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. And at the end of the day, the break is going to help them be more productive. Because if you push someone to their breaking point, and they're in the weeds and they can't take care of their tables, they can't cook the food, they can't get the stuff out the window, it's not going to be helpful at the end of the day anyways. So just, I think, making sure to assert yourself in a positive way before it gets too far. So learning your own personal warning signs, your own personal triggers of, this is how I know that I'm at a 7 or an 8 and I need to take a break to get me back down to a 5, or else they're not going to be able to do their job effectively.
And Chef, I know you talked about mindfulness a bit, and before we even started the panel, you talked about meditation, and I think that as a practice probably teaches you how to figure out what your 8 or your 7 is, because it'll be different for everyone, right?
It is different for everyone, and it shouldn't be a scary concept, because it's really just about sitting down and breathing and being consciously aware of your breath, and that's the starting point, and you don't have to try to get anywhere or be something or something someplace. It's just a matter of sitting down and breathing. And I would say yes. I mean, that can be done anywhere, like you said, to take a break and go somewhere. I just read something actually yesterday about just taking a break wherever you're at. You read this a lot in, let's say, self-help books, but just take a moment in whatever job you have and take some time for yourself, a couple of minutes, then get back up and go back to doing what it is you need to do to just get recentered and refocused. But I did want to expand on something Ashley said, which I found to be very helpful in my career, which is mentoring. Now I'm in a position where I can mentor, but prior to that, I found mentors who could help guide me down that path of career development, taking on little new challenges that were off from what it was that I was doing. For example, if I was a line cook, I would study chocolate or study sugar work on the side. That would be something that would allow me to break away from the pattern of the daily routine and still expand my career and expand my knowledge of the business and have fun doing it and not have to go into other activities.
Mm-hmm. And I do feel like I am starting to see the conversation in the community changing a bit. Unfortunately, it's been a lot of high-profile suicides, like Anthony Bourdain, that has jump-started or reinvigorated a discussion on depression and wellness. And I've even seen some cool stuff in our local scene where, for instance, Patashu Incorporated has started a ladies bowling league.
I'm part of it.
Which, yeah, I think so. So how has that been as far as, kind of giving people in this industry something different to do, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think establishing different connections, just like what you were talking about, and really finding a network, finding mentors, finding a community outside of that daily routine in the restaurant is really important. And so I was part of the Patashu Foundation Ambassador Program, and we all kind of recognized this need to just enjoy each other's company outside of our normal setting and do something active and do something fun, and it doesn't have to center around going to a bar or anything like that. So it's been wonderful. I mean, it's been amazing, and you make connections and find new people to talk to, and it's really interesting. So
great. I've even seen popping up on a lot of menus now. I guess we call them mocktails, or even more smoothies or juices on higher or finer dining menus throughout the city here. So is there a bit of a shift that you're seeing? I guess Chef or Ashley might be the best person to ask. Are you seeing any trends towards maybe some healthier situations or something along those lines?
yeah, I mean, I think people are exploring those options for sure. I think that we're trying to generally, I think as a culture here in Indianapolis, we're trying to find our identity. What is Indianapolis food? What is food in Indiana anymore? We're not just state fair, tenderloins and corn dogs, right? Mm-hmm. So I think people are actively kind of searching for that next thing. And certainly I think health and wellness are, I wouldn't even necessarily call it a trend because I don't think it's going anywhere. But you do see a lot more of that. There's, people putting CBD in cocktails now. And so, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to diet and nutrition, as I found out in the last year and a half. For example, if you eat a lot of breads and starches and the proteins that are in them and how they affect your overall well-being, obviously alcohol, sugar, and how it affects your well-being, just trying to focus on finding different foods, how they affect you, and make your day better, easier, less stressful. I have a son he eats starch, and when he's not eating starch, he has starch, and then he has more starch and more starch, and we can see how that affects his overall mental health, as opposed to the other son who's a little older and a little more self-conscious as far as what he's eating and how his mood is a little more lifted up. He's a little more active, a little brighter. Not to take anything away from either one of them, but it's something that's visible that you can just see right there in front of you, and that's diet, that's nutrition, that's what you're putting in, the kind of energy that it's giving off and what it's allowing you to do in your day.
Well, I think it's...
Sorry, you talked about management, I think, has a significant role to play in this cultural change. Something has to change internally. I think the emphasis on well-being and wellness has to be top-down. So the personal journeys of the people who work in this environment has to be taken into serious consideration, right? Managers have to pay more attention to the personal journeys of these individuals, because when you do that, it influences their vocational journeys, and ultimately the organizational journeys a lot smoother. So I think they have to be champions of wellness and well-being in the environment, and they have to examine ways that they could still, you have those busy hours in XYZ, and how do you keep service, but at the same time, take into consideration the well-being and the wellness, and pay attention to the individual's wellness. And when you show that care or that concern, it could really give them the latitude that they need to be more to assess themselves and also express themselves when they need the care that they need. Yeah.
I think that's a really important point too, because there's definitely this correlation of people that are more successful and seem to have more power in the community. There's a greater responsibility that comes with that, and so when you see people that don't kind of understand that role and they don't do anything with it, it feels kind of like a waste. So I really applaud. I'm always a champion of first and foremost women in the industry. And beyond that, anyone who takes that approach of health and wellness to their team and their staff, and they really encourage that kind of culture. So I think it's really good to applaud those people and lift them up and recognize them for that kind of leadership.
Well, and for our association members and students who are tuning in to this conversation, who are managers or will soon find themselves in a management position, what are some things that they should be looking out for? Just because I do think this is something that is not as widely discussed as it probably should be, and they may be thinking, oh, how can I change? What are some, what are some warning signs that managers or anyone in a leadership position can look for to try and help their staff?
I think there's a lot of things that they could look for. I think one of the most obvious things that they could see is the response of your staff to you. If you find that your staff are being more aggressive or not as responsive to you, might be an indication that maybe you're not taking the correct approach with them, or you need to change things up a little bit. I think another thing, because when we work in the industry, everybody works so closely together. So one major thing that you might see is a change in behavior. So you might notice that someone who was always on time is showing up, someone who might be calling in more often, or might be asking to be the first one cut, and which might be different from their normal behavior. you might notice a change in their appearance or hygiene if they're having some mental health issues or burnout or substance use. A lot of the stuff I feel like we've noticed in the industry is going to be the physical stuff because we're so busy all the time. We don't always have the time to sit down and say, hey, how's your day going? How are you feeling? But if you can notice some physical changes, and if you do notice those changes, I think that it's important to say something to the people. Let them know that you've noticed a change, and let them know that there is help available. Never be afraid to ask someone, whether they're contemplating suicide or they're struggling with substance use. A lot of times when we're in these situations, we feel very lonely. So to have someone, especially someone in a position that could help you and that could help switch your schedule around or kind of point you in the right direction, I think it's really important as that person to be the person that asks.
And just to have resources in their back pocket, to be able to give to their staff. I think that's really important too. So, if you are seeking out a more management leadership role, just kind of knowing to recognize the signs and knowing how to help and support someone in that situation. And, I don't want to come off as like shaming in any way of partaking and partying and, there's, we all need to unwind in different ways. So, but I do think that recognizing when there is like real substance abuse happening and someone who just can't seem to get out from under that, depression, anxiety, all these things that are pretty prevalent in this industry. And so, it's not like you have to have like a straight edge staff or anything. It's just knowing how to support people in the right way.
Yeah, the power of communication, of sitting in a round table, of sitting with people and just talking and inquiring about. So at IU Bloomington, sometimes we get the staff together and we just ask them to tell us about their weekend and to tell us about something they're looking forward to this week or something they couldn't deal with last week, XYZ. Sometimes, this industry is so busy and there isn't time for management and the folks to actually get together and just talk, right? But there are those downtimes, the hours that are not very busy. Those times, if managers begin to take those time periods to just sit with employees and just check in with them, find out how things are going at home, inquire about their sport game, XYZ. Just those having that kind of environment really allows people to express themselves and seek help when they need it, and it also allows you to know them better so that you can then identify those changes and risk factors that might be expressing themselves in different ways. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. I've almost always in a management role taken time to sit down and talk with somebody, not in a review format, but in a format where we're just talking, so that they feel a little more comfortable. I know I can be, put offish, and I try to open that door and say, that's not really what I'm all about, and the door is always open, kind of, standard answer, but just to sit down and talk without any review or how do I say it, evaluation, where you just be one-on-one with somebody, and then when problems arise, it's a little easier to have another conversation that might not be so pleasant and help guide them through that.
Well, and what does it look like if someone refuses help? Or, I'm not sure if that's the right way to put it, but you talk to them or have tried to talk to them a couple of times. What does that look like in our industry? What does it look like from just a clinical perspective? I guess that's a question for anyone on the panel.
Yeah, well, clinically I couldn't answer, but eventually you reach a point where you have to break off, because if it's affecting everybody else within your environment, then you really have no choice, because the job must continue. But I've found when I've come across people who are having problems like that just trying to be there as much as possible and give them as much guidance as you possibly can based on my own personal experience. And again, having that open door policy to help out, again, up to a certain point, because I'm not medically trained to be able to help them, but I can, as you said, make connections and help find somebody who can help them. Or my thing is mentoring, so find a mentor, somebody somebody I might know, and say, okay, well, you should go talk to so-and-so because I think they can help you. And
Also,
that takes a personal commitment with your staff. And in return, you kind of want a personal commitment back.
Also, I think recognizing that, maybe this is just not the right position for them or the right industry. There's a lot of different ways to be in this industry. It's not just about working on the line or in the kitchen or front of house service. Speaking to management and leadership, if you recognize that someone is having a consistent problem and this is just not a good influence on them to be in this situation, maybe trying to help them figure that out and help them find a different fit. It's not a good fit for everyone. And if you are in the service industry, like I said, there are a lot of different ways to be in this restaurant industry. I have found that to be very true, and the more you make connections and network and ask questions and just talk to people, the more you find different opportunities and avenues to be in this food space.
Just having a conversation here at Ivy Tech earlier about how when a lot of people go into their field, they maybe don't even know what job they end up in is even an option for them. So I think that's a great suggestion.
I might be a perfect example of that too, because I started I wanted to go into nutrition and dietetics, and then I wanted to know how to cook as well. So I went to culinary school here, and then I wanted to collect experiences, right? So I wanted to learn how to do steam butchery and cheese making and baking and pastry, and that path just sort of naturally led me to meeting my ex-husband, and we opened the restaurant, and then I had an unexpected, unwanted exit from that, and then being like, well, shit, I don't know what to do next, So you just kind of figure it out along the way, and you use those experiences that you've gathered. And now, I opened my own business again. I'm an entrepreneur, and I do a wide variety of things for different clients. So it could be like social media marketing and PR for someone. Or sort of like this restaurant rescue kind of situation where I'm helping people overhaul operations and update menus, or just consulting, doing events. So I've kind of found a path of my own, I guess.
I was going to say, and I wanted to say something too about going back to speaking to the manager. It can be a very uncomfortable conversation because we grow so close together that we really care about the people that we work with. So having to fire someone or having to have these difficult conversations with them, I think it's important to know that people can't change unless they acknowledge that change needs to be made. So you could be having this conversation over and over and over again, but if they're not at the point of acceptance, they're not going to make the changes. So at the end of the day, terminating them or bringing them to a different spot could be that key that helps them get into recovery or make changes. Because if they really enjoyed that position or like that job, and then now they've lost it because of this, and a lot of times I work with students where you'll see the pattern. They've lost multiple jobs until they can finally understand the connection between their substance use or mental health issues and these jobs. So at the end of the day, firing someone or terminating someone because of this could help them. And I know it's hard to do, but
and I was
it's really
kind of
hard.
wondering as we have this conversation, at what point does the conversation go as far as it can go from a management perspective to where, they've fulfilled the obligation to where it needs to turn into something a little bit more clinical, I guess.
Yeah, but to your point as well, and to all the points made so far, what we see is what we become. So managers, so part of making it easy for people to come forward and seek for help is to make sure that wellness is visible throughout the company, throughout the restaurant, wherever it is, right? So bringing in folks, there are tons of state-funded, government-funded wellness programs and prevention programs, mental health, first aid, XYZ. Bringing people intermittently to provide training, to provide assistance, having signs on the walls, emphasizing wellness and encouraging wellness and having those conversations and just, by making that very visible and very palpable to every employee, it lets them understand that they're not alone here, that this is not a place where everybody's aloof of personal concerns and wellness. So when they see those signs and when they see the wellness folk coming in to talk about mental health, XYZ, and talk about substance use or misuse, when they have when it's everywhere around them, they're more likely to be to come forward to seek help.
And I love that line, "You are what you see," because I do think from, right now there is kind of a rock star pirate chef trope that does get glamorized, and it's hard, when you have students fresh out of an institution like this who are eager to put their skills to work and really get into the trenches, and, they feel that they have to be that when there's so many other examples of what it's like to run a professional kitchen. And I don't know if off the bat, either here locally or nationally, are there any, culinary superstars, chefs? I know I'm kind of putting you guys on the spot, but are there any, chefs that you would kind of say have an alternative to that pirate rock star chef image that students could look to?
For sure. If you're a female in the industry, I would suggest actually joining a network called Indie Women in Food. Shameless self-promotion, I guess. I don't know. But it's a really amazing network that I helped co-found, and it's a really just basically a support network of females in the industry to share resources and ask questions and feel comfortable in that space. And there are so many amazing females and chefs that have been doing this forever, and they don't get the limelight. They usually take a back seat to male counterparts, So, for example, Chef Becky Hossetter of Duos, she's been a chef for decades, and she's been in this industry, and she kind of has a mission-based restaurant, and I really believe in that. And, that's a perfect example of an alternative to this sort of like Food Network star. Like, I would recommend to students, even though it's fun and glamorous to like look at these chefs and, all their tattoos and like whatever they're doing, but it's also really important to like turn off the Food Network and go see what some people are doing in the community. So.
I guess one thing that I do want to make sure that we touch on for students at Ivy Tech is just maybe, Melissa, have you kind of run down some of the options for students here that they have if they feel like they need to seek help or seek additional resources?
Wrote down some phone numbers for everybody.
Thank you.
So, like I said, at Ivy Tech, students, any student who's enrolled here can access free counseling services. There are a lot of agencies in the area, too, that work on sliding scale, especially if their students are first in the industry, might not have insurance. 211 is a perfect place to go to. You can just type in what you're looking for, whether it's mental health services, substance use counseling, and you can find resources in your area and a lot of information about how to access that. A lot of the more popular ones here in Indianapolis, so I work for Families First, and we provide substance use counseling, domestic violence services, mental health services, sexual assault, crisis intervention, any community mental health center. So Midtown is one, Cummins Behavioral Health is another one. Salvation Army Harbor Light does a detox and substance use program. Valley Vista has inpatient stuff. Raphael Health Center, which is right down the road from here, does behavioral health services and mental health services. So people can have access to medical needs as well as their mental health or substance use needs. I also, we have 24-hour crisis lines that anybody could call. It doesn't have to be just for suicide. It could be for any reason. If you're feeling overwhelmed, you're laying in bed, you can't sleep, you're just having some really negative thoughts. So the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. Families First also runs the local line that runs with the National Suicide Hotline, and that number is 317-251-7575. They also have an option for a text line. So if you don't feel comfortable talking to someone on the phone, you just kind of want to get some of these thoughts out and have some feedback, you can text CSIS to 839863. So those are all options for people to reach out. All of these things are confidential. I think that's an important thing for people to remember as well. Even if you go through your EAP, through your insurance provided by your company, everything is confidential, so you don't have to worry about it getting back to your boss or to your coworkers or your family. But it's just really important to just reach out and see what your options are. We were talking about that earlier, to be proactive versus reactive.
So may I add that that's a lot of information? And hopefully somebody will post that at the end of this video so that everybody can get access to that, because I couldn't keep up with you.
Yeah, I know.
Yes. Hopefully send out some additional.
Some links or stuff.
Links and numbers.
Yeah.
Are there any questions from the people we have in that audience?
I was just going to mention about that concept of culture. I know we hit it on a few times in the conversation, and it's something in my role as a department chair here that I hear back from students about as they begin their careers while they're in school, which we encourage. They're running into this. So one example, I had a young culinary student straight out of high school who was excited, passionate about becoming a chef, started taking classes and got a job at a very popular restaurant in the city. And the sous chef told him soon after he joined the force there that if you're going to stay in this job and you're going to pursue this career and go to culinary school at the same time, you're going to need help. And he encouraged him to do crack cocaine and actually got him started.
Oh my God.
And I saw the tragedy of that person. I saw the young man flunk out of his classes, just kind of drop out. He did luckily find some help when he and his family and his network recognized what was happening. He did get help. The good news is he's back on his feet. He's doing better. He switched jobs, and that was my first recommendation: is don't ever be in an environment where you're influenced in that way. He looked up to this person, and that's where I go back to culture and management. It's really important, I think, as managers, that we understand, who's leading our workforce and how are they influencing the workforce in this area of culture, and how does that affect self-care and wellness.
I would really recommend to students to, if they're interested in being in this healthy food space, which does absolutely exist, and I would just recommend that they do a little bit of research, reach out to some people and find out, who are these people in town that are really leading good examples of positive culture in their restaurant. And so there are people out there that have answers to that, and they would have great recommendations. So just do a little research, ask some questions. You don't always have to work at the top, 5 restaurants in town. So I know they tend to get all the attention. And they're not all bad either, but I'm saying, there's a lot of variety here.
I think I saw another question.
So I have heard of the services that are available to the students, the counseling, etc. So and it's nice to see the face, and I have preferred them to see something. So I don't know. Since you're here, I assume I was already assuming that it's going to be confidential.
Yes.
And there is going to be in a safe space.
Yes.
And I'm assuming they can see somebody like you once a week, once every 2 weeks, like whenever.
Yes. So the program has grown quickly. So right now we're currently working on getting a second therapist, trying to get at least a second part-time therapist here, but we also help run the office with master's level interns from IUPUI, Ball State, to help kind of help with the flow of students, to make sure that we can see them in a timely manner.
And it's free.
It is absolutely free, and it's nice because the contract we have is they'll never have to worry about a cost coming to my office. So we usually give them about 8 sessions, but if they're at their 8th session and they still need help, they will not get turned away. We will work with them to figure out how to best serve them, and if they do need more intensive treatment, say inpatient, substance use or detox, I will help connect them. I've even gone with students to meet them at these places, because that can be a huge barrier for them. Coming to counseling at Ivy Tech is safe because you're just walking across campus and going into a random office. It can be very scary to take that step to seek outside services. Yeah, we got to get them there. We got to get them help, and if that's what it takes, we're willing to do it.
Any closing thoughts that anyone would like to add?
I just want to remind you that there's also SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration Services Administration, DMHA, Division for Mental Health Administration, all offer tools and resources, facilities, directives, and these kinds of things. And Prevention Insights at IU also goes into workplaces and looks at teams and groups, people who work in groups, and train them to thrive and to be resilient, to manage the risk factors that are around them, to keep them from substance use, and to help them manage the mental health, and train them to also look for, I think it's called mental health first aid, and what to do when you have a colleague who might need some assistance, and you can be able to be that person that provides first aid, and also I think mental health awareness, to look for it. So these kinds of trainings are all available free to individuals and groups funded by the state. So you feel free to call IU School of Public Health or DMHA directly, and they'll refer you back to us. And this help is there, and you should be proactive and bold to seek out for a friend or for yourself as well.
I would go over the same thing I started with, which is mentoring. Was a very important role for me, not for me, but for me to have mentors who I could follow and see their example that was set and mentor with them, and in reverse, hopefully mentor other people. And it's a conscious awareness that you have to make your own decisions about what you want to do, and it's pretty obvious that substance abuse will not get you where you want to be. I mean, it may last for a while, but in the end, you need to get help.
Well, and Chris, I think you're right with mentoring. It's a huge thing, because I think that creates a safe space.
Yeah.
Because you're not their boss, you're not their coworker, it's almost like a protective factor that we know with trauma and resiliency that people can go through all of these experiences and somehow they turn out okay, and they find that these protective factors, that one important person that was there in their life, that they felt understood, they felt mentored by, really made the difference between what path they kind of went on.
Absolutely. I can list 3 right for me that I followed behind and helped to guide me and keep me out of trouble.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for being a part of this important conversation. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in and who joined us today. And hopefully we can have another discussion soon on other important issues that face the industry.